Neighbors laughed when old Farmer Jack dragged a 70-year-old plow into a lower field that had not held water all summer. By noon, Walt Briggs was standing at the fence, telling everyone Jack had finally decided to plow dust with scrap iron. The livestock tank was nearly empty. The drilling estimate was more than the farm could carry, and the modern map showed no working well anywhere near that field. But Jack was not watching the soil. He was listening to the plow, and when that rusty blade caught hard beneath the old furrow line, everyone who laughed had to watch Jack uncover the stone rim of the well his father had never forgotten. The plow had been hanging in the back shed longer than Eli Turner had been alive. It was rusted along the beam. The moldboard was nicked. The handles were worn smooth where hands long gone had held them through spring after spring. Most people would have called it decoration. Eli called it worse. He stood in the shed doorway with both hands in the pocket of his faded hoodie and looked at the thing Jack was dragging into the light. "That thing belongs in the weeds, Jack." Jack did not answer right away. He pulled the plow another foot across the dirt floor, stopped, and wiped dust from the old iron with his glove. Old iron remembers straight lines better than young men do. Eli smiled because he thought Jack was joking. Jack was not. If you have ever seen an old tool prove a young man wrong, stay with Jack's story, because Jack was not pulling that plow out to plant anything. He was pulling it out because the farm was thirsty, and the only man who might have remembered where the water had gone was already buried under the hill. The lower field had been dry since June. Not ordinary dry, not the kind of dry a good rain could fix. The grass had gone brittle. The pond had sunk into a green-edged bowl. The livestock tank near the far fence had to be filled every other morning from a hauled water trailer Jack could barely afford. Every week the bill came higher. Every week Eli looked at the numbers and said what a practical man was supposed to say. "We should move the animals up top." Jack would nod. Then he would look toward the lower field. Up top had grass, but not enough. The lower field was rough, but it had carried stock for 3 generations. It had carried Jack's father's cattle. It had carried Jack's first herd. It had carried the old red bull that broke 2 gates and still came when Jack's wife called him by name. A field like that did not become useless all at once. People only called it useless when they forgot what made it work. The county water map showed nothing. Eli had printed it from the office computer and spread it across the kitchen table. No marked well, no registered spring, no active water source in the lower field. Just contour lines, parcel borders, and a blank place where Jack kept staring. "The map says there's nothing there," Eli said. Jack tapped the lower field with one finger. "My father said different." Eli sighed softly, the way young men do when they are trying to respect an old man and disagree with him at the same time. "With respect, Jack, your father said that 50 years ago." Jack folded the map. "That does not make it false." Walt Briggs heard about the plow before Jack even hitched it. By mid-morning, he was at the fence with 2 other men, watching like they had come for a county fair mistake. Walt was nearly Jack's age, grey-stubbled, narrow-eyed, and comfortable, laughing because he had known Jack long enough to think friendship gave him the right. "You going to turn that field or wake the dead?" Walt called. Jack backed the old tractor toward the plow. Eli guided the hitch, still shaking his head. "He says there used to be a well down there. Walt laughed. There used to be a lot of things. Doesn't mean you can drag them back with scrap iron. Jack climbed onto the tractor seat. The tractor coughed once, twice, then settled into a rough idle. It was not a pretty machine either. Faded paint, oil-dark bolts, a steering wheel polished by use instead of pride. But Jack trusted machines that had earned their scars. He looked down the lower field. The old furrow line was nearly gone. Years of grass, erosion, and dry weather had softened it into a faint run across the field. Most people would not have seen it. Jack saw it. His father had shown it to him when he was 12. Thomas had stood beside him at the edge of that same field, one hand resting on the boy's shoulder, the other pointing across the grass. A well does not always leave a pipe, his father had said. Sometimes it leaves a line. Young Jack had squinted. All he had seen was field. His father had pointed again. See where the plow used to pull heavy? See that straight run? Men used to mark what mattered with work. Furrows, stones, tool paths. You remember those when posts rot and maps get lost. Jack had not understood then. At 12, a well was a hole with water in it. At 68, with the tank near empty and the water hauler charging by the mile, Jack understood that his father had been teaching him how memory hides in ordinary ground. Drop your town in the comments if someone older once taught you something you did not understand, until years later. Jack lowered the plow. The first pass was ugly. The blade bit shallow, skipped, then cut too deep. Dry clods rolled over and broke apart into dust. Eli walked behind the tractor for the first 50 yards, watching the furrow crumble. It's not even cutting clean. Jack kept both hands on the wheel. I'm not asking it to look pretty. What are you asking it to do? Jack listened to the rattle of the hitch, the scrape of iron, the uneven pull in the tractor's frame. I'm asking it to remember. Eli looked back at Walt. Walt grinned and lifted both hands as if to say the old man had finally gone beyond help. Jack made the first pass, then the second, then the third. Each time, the plow complained. Each time, dust rose and drifted across the dry grass. Each time, Jack watched the line more than the soil. He was not trying to turn the field. He was following the pull. The old plow dragged differently where the ground changed. Light over dry sand, heavy where clay held, rough where old stones slept close to the surface. His father had known that. Old machines told the truth through resistance. A new blade might have sliced through the top and missed the story. This plow had been built for the field when the field still remembered itself. By the fourth pass, Eli had stopped smiling. Not because he believed Jack, because Jack had stopped looking like a man doing something foolish. He looked like a man reading. Halfway down the lower field, the tractor jerked hard. The front wheels bounced. The plow blade caught with a sound that was not rock and not root. The tractor nearly stalled before Jack pushed in the clutch. Dust rolled past him in a thin brown cloud. Eli came running. You hit something. Walt called from the fence. Told you that old thing would find the first rock in the county. Jack shut off the tractor. Silence fell hard after the engine died. He climbed down slowly. His knees were not quick anymore, but his hands were steady. The plow blade was buried at an angle, locked against something under the soil. Eli bent close. Probably limestone. Jack crouched beside the blade. Maybe. He pulled off one glove and pressed his bare fingers into the dirt near the catch. Eli frowned. What are you doing? Feeling the shape. Jack scraped soil away with his gloved hand. Dry dirt first, then packed clay, then a grey edge. He brushed more carefully. The edge continued. Too smooth for a field rock, too even. He cleared another inch and found a curve. Eli stopped talking. Jack worked slower. Walt left the fence and started across the field. "What is it?" Jack did not answer. He dug with his hands until the shape widened beneath the blade. Stone. Cut stone. Laid in a circle. The top edge of something covered and buried. Eli whispered, "That's not a rock." Jack sat back on his heels. His face did not change much, but his eyes did. Before this old well comes back into the light, subscribe for more old farmer Jack stories about forgotten machines, hard fields, and the wisdom that does not rust. They brought shovels from the barn. Even Walt took one. Nobody laughed while they worked. The old plow stayed where it was, blade still pressed against the buried rim like a finger pointing to the truth. They cleared the dirt in a widening circle. The stone rim came out piece by piece. Some stones had shifted. Some were cracked. But the circle was there, covered with a flat slab that had been hidden under nearly a foot of soil. Eli ran his hand along the edge. "How did it get buried?" Jack looked toward the upper slope. "Years. Wash. Grass. Men dying before they tell things twice." Walt lowered his shovel. "I farmed beside this field 40 years. Jack nodded. "So did I." That was the part that made the silence heavier. The well had been there while they drove past it, while they complained about dry seasons, while they trusted maps that had never walked the field. It had been there under their boots. Jack went to the tractor toolbox and pulled out an old rope. At the end was a dented metal bucket, the kind nobody used anymore because plastic was lighter and easier. Eli looked at the bucket. "You kept that too?" Jack looped the rope through his hand. "I keep a lot of things that still know their job." They pried the slab up just enough for a gap. Cold air rose from below. Not the smell of rot, not the smell of dry dirt, cold air. Deep air. Eli leaned back. Walt took off his cap. Jack lowered the bucket through the opening. The rope slipped through his hands. 10 feet. 15. 20. Eli's eyebrows rose. "How deep is it?" Jack did not answer. The bucket dropped farther. Then the rope slackened. A soft sound came from below. Not loud, barely more than a touch. But every man standing there heard it. Water. Jack held the rope still for a moment. Then he pulled. The bucket was heavier coming up. When it reached the opening, water spilled over one dented side and darkened the dust on the stone rim. Eli stared at it. Walt did not speak. Jack dipped 2 fingers into the bucket and rubbed them together. Clear. Cold. Real. The old well was still holding. For a long while, nobody moved. Then Eli looked at the rusty plow. Then at the water. Then at Jack. "You knew." Jack shook his head. "I remembered enough to look." That was all he said. By evening, a well man named Carter Bell came out from town. He was younger than Jack, but old enough to respect a covered well before trusting it. He checked the rim. He checked the depth. He lowered a light, took a sample, and told them not to drink a drop until the test came back clean. Jack nodded. Old wisdom did not mean careless wisdom. A well could save a farm and still kill a man if pride got ahead of sense. So they waited. The next morning, Carter came back with better equipment. Over the next week, the well was cleared properly. The stones were reset. The cover was replaced with a safe cap. The water was tested. A small pump line was run to the lower tank. Nothing about it was easy. Nothing about it was cheap, but it was cheaper than drilling blind, cheaper than selling the herd, cheaper than giving up on a field because a paper map had left it blank. The first time water ran into the lower tank again, Eli stood beside Jack and watched the animals come down from the shade. They came slowly at first, then all at once. Cattle know the sound of water better than men know the sound of advice. Walt came by that afternoon, or he stood at the fence without calling out. Jack was in the shed, wiping the old plow with an oily rag. The blade still had rust on it. It would always have rust on it, but the edge was clean where it had struck the stone. Walt stepped inside. I laughed too soon. Jack kept wiping the blade. Most men do. Walt looked at the plow hanging from its chain. You going to use it again? Jack shrugged. Maybe not. Then why clean it? Jack ran the rag along the worn handle. Because it did its work. Walt nodded like he understood, or like he wanted to. After Walt left, Eli stayed in the doorway. The sun was low behind him. The shed smelled of oil, dust, and old wood. You really think tools remember? He asked. Jack hung the rag over a nail. No. Eli looked confused. Jack touched the plow handle. People remember through tools, if they keep them long enough to ask the right questions. Eli stepped closer. I thought it was scrap. It was, Jack said, until we needed what it knew. By late summer, the lower field did not turn lush. Old Farmer Jack stories do not pretend one discovery erases every hard season. The grass came back in patches. The tank held. The animals stayed. The water bill dropped enough for the farm to breathe. That was all Jack had asked for. Not abundance. A chance. On the last evening of August, Jack walked the old furrow line alone. The covered well sat safe and marked now, with a stone post beside it, so no one would have to depend on memory alone. The rusty plow hung back in the shed, cleaned, oiled, still old, still ugly, still useful in a way no one had expected. Jack stood by the well and thought of his father's hand on his shoulder. A well does not always leave a pipe. Sometimes it leaves a line. His father had not left him water. He had left him a way to find it. The plow had not saved the farm because it was strong. It saved the farm because Jack knew what it had been built to remember. Some men need a map to know where water used to be. Jack only needed the pull of old iron, the memory of his father's voice, and enough patience to listen when the plow spoke. If this story found you at the right time, share it with someone who knows old things are not always finished just because the world stops using them. Sometimes the thing everyone calls scrap is only waiting for the one person who still remembers what it was made to do.